So today is 20th March. Yeah, 20th March 2025. Since last 2 days, we were discussing about the 5 hindrances, the 5 kinds of hindrances. Most of the time, we are overwhelmed by those 5 kinds of hindrances. The hindrance of sensual desire, it occurs when we are having an unwise attention, the frequent unwise attention on attention to the beautiful objects. When we see the things very beautiful, we take it as a beautiful. So having frequent unwise attention to the beautiful objects makes this sensual desire, the hindrance of sensual desire, occur. The hindrance of ill will, it occurs because of the frequent unwise attention to the objects of aversion. We are taking that object which makes us angry, disappointed again and again. We are taking those objects again and again, and because of that, the hindrance of ill will occurs. The hindrance of sloth and torpor in the middle occurs because of the unwise attention to the discontent, the laziness, lethargy, drowsiness. So because of that, this sloth and torpor occurs within us. And the hindrance of restlessness and remorse, it occurs because of the frequent unwise attention to the agitated mind, unrest mind. And again, the hindrance of skeptical doubt, Vicikiccha Nīvaranāni, it occurs because of the frequent unwise attention to the things, to the objects that caused doubt. We are thinking that again and again. So this hindrance of doubt, it arises constantly. So these 5 kinds of hindrances, when they are present in our mind becomes impure. These are the impediments of the mind. Cetaso upakilesa, they are the impediments of the mind. Our mind becomes impure. And because of that, we cannot see the objects clearly. We cannot see the things clearly because the mind is not clear. Mind is not pure. There is no clarity in the mind. So we won't see the objects very clearly. And also it weakens the wisdom. So it is explained in the text that when those hindrances occur constantly, then the wisdom that occurs intermittently will become very weak, very slow, and very unclear. Unclear. And when those hindrances, they arise, those hindrances, when they arise, they will not let the mundane and supramundane wisdom to arise. They will not let wisdom occur. They prevent the wisdom from occurring. And not only that, when those hindrances occur constantly, they even make the supernormal power that one has attained already destroy. One will lose one's supernormal power when those hindrances becomes strong, when they occur constantly. So that way, the hindrances weaken the wisdom. So therefore, those hindrances are the negative mental states, the mental objects that they make our mind impure, and they do not let the wisdom occur. They do not let wisdom arise. They are the destroyers of the wisdom. So when the hindrances are there, they make us blind. Andakarana, they make us blind. We become blind. Though we have these eyes, but we will not have a wisdom, eye of wisdom. So we become blind. They destroy the vision of knowledge, the vision of wisdom. And they also destroy the knowledge, and they block wisdom from arising. And also they block wisdom from arising, and they do not let us to reach the Nibbana. When those hindrances constantly occur in the mind, they do not lead us to Nibbana, where all kinds of sufferings are extinguished, and they are on the side of distress. Vikata Pakhiya, they are on the side of distress. So these hindrances are very dangerous, especially when we are doing this Satipatthana meditation. As long as our mind is with those hindrances, as long as those hindrances overwhelm our mind, then our mind becomes very rigid. Our mind becomes unwieldy. Our mind becomes not bright. So we cannot observe the objects. We cannot get concentration. It is like a gold which is affected with the 5 kinds of impurities. The impurities of gold, they are iron, copper, lead, tin, and silver. When gold is mixed, gold is affected with these 5 impurities, then though we want to make a beautiful ornaments, necklaces, rings, bracelets, it will not be easy. It will not be easy. And though we made it, but it will be lack of radiant, not so beautiful, not bright. Same way, if our mind is overwhelmed by those 5 kinds of impurities, then we cannot observe the objects with effort and aiming. We will not develop mindfulness and concentration, so we will not see the very true natures of the objects that we are observing. Everything becomes just dull, unclear, blur. Therefore, these 5 kinds of impurities are the very dangerous for the vipassana practice. These negative mental states that obstructs our vipassana practice, the satipatthana practice, they are the very big disturbances. They are the very big enemies, dangerous enemies for the practice, especially when we are trying to develop our mind, especially when we are trying to have the very good, excellent mind. Those hindrances are the enemies for us. Therefore, in the text, the Buddha mentioned that without removing those 5 hindrances, without having overcoming these 5 hindrances, there is no chance for knowledge to arise. There is no chance for knowledge to arise. It is all impossible for knowledge to arise. So the Buddha explained this fact with an example. For example, there is river flowing down from very high mountain. Since it flows down from very high mountains, the current of that river is very swift current. And because it flows down from the high mountain, it can flow to a very far. And it carries everything. It's on the way. It carries everything, and very easily it reaches the ocean, the sea. But if someone opens an outlet on the two banks of that river, now though the river flows down from the very high mountain, its current will not be that swift because there are two outlets. So the current of that river dispersed. It dispersed, and therefore that river cannot carry everything is on the way to the ocean because it dispersed in the middle of the way. Why? A person opens an outlet on the two sides of the river. In the same way, if our mind is overwhelmed by those hindrances, then we cannot see the things clearly because the mind is dispersed. It is not concentrated on the objects. The mind cannot observe, the mind cannot note the objects. Therefore, sometimes it can note, but many times the noting mind cannot observe the objects. So the vipassana knowledge, the insight knowledge, will be very weak. If the mind is overwhelmed by those hindrances constantly, there is no chance for the vipassana knowledge to occur. If those hindrances arise intermittently, the vipassana knowledge that arises will be weak. So that vipassana knowledge cannot lead us to the ocean of Nibbana because it is disturbed by the hindrances. That is why the Buddha said these hindrances are a very fearful enemies in the practice. They are very dangerous. They are very dangerous. We won't be able to perform the wholesome deeds when those hindrances arise constantly. We won't be able to perform the wholesome deeds. Therefore, what should we do? Then the Buddha gave a method, Buddha gave a way what to do when we don't like those hindrances. We want to have the vipassana knowledge. We want to reach our destination of Nibbana. What should we do? So, in order not to let these hindrances to enter in our mind, in order to dispel those hindrances, one should practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness. One should practice, one should cultivate, one should develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness. One should develop the 7 awakening factors. One should restrain one's faculties. One should guard one's sense doors. Then only one will be able to prevent those hindrances from occurring. One will be able to dispel those hindrances. So when we practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness, Satipatthana Bhavana, it is very important to guard the 6 sense doors. the 6 faculties. The faculty, the eye door, ear door, nose door, tongue door, body door, and the mind door. The 6 doors we have to guard. We have to guard these 6 doors with mindfulness. Sati Kawata. Kawata, Sati is mindfulness. Kawata is the panels of the door. So we should close these sense doors with the help of mindfulness, Sati. So if we are able to guard those 6 sense doors with mindfulness, then hindrances will not get a chance to enter into the mind. So if we are not able to guard those sense doors with mindfulness, the panels of mindfulness, then very easily these hindrances enter into the mind. And therefore, it's very important to guard these sense doors. In the eye door, the visible forms, it appears. Visible form, the visible objects, it appear in the eye door. In the ear, sound appear. In the nose, the smell appear. And the taste, it appears in the tongue door. And many tangible objects appear in the body door. And many other mental objects, they appear in the mind door. So whenever those objects appear in these doors, we have to note them. We have to observe them. If we are failed to note, if we are failed to observe, whenever those objects appear in these 6 sense doors, then very easily the hindrances will enter. But when we are able to observe them, then that mindfulness will stop them, prevent them from entering. So when we see something, the visible object, the visible form, it strikes on the eye base. It strikes on the eye base. So when it strikes on the eye base, then we see something. We see that visible form. And when the visible form that we see, that we saw, if that visible form is something desirable, something good, we feel good. If that visible object is not very good, then we feel, oh, it's not good. So the visible form and the seeing consciousness, they meet on the eye door, and so we feel good or bad. During that time, we just need to note as seeing. Yeah? Whenever we see something, some visible form, we just note it as seeing. That means we need effort so that the mind becomes active and it can note. And also we have to aim so that the mind directly falls on that object. And we will be able to note seeing, and we come to know that object. Sometimes we come to know about the object that is the visible form here. And sometimes we come to know about the eye base, the eye door, or eye sensitivity. We come to know about the eye. Oh, from this eye, I am seeing that object. We come to know that. Through the eye, we see the object. And sometimes we will be aware of that seeing consciousness. We see that visible objects. So any one of these mind and mental and physical phenomena, we will be aware of that. We come to know about that. Why we come to know those physical and mental phenomena? Because we are observing at the moment of seeing. So here the visible form, the visible object, and this eye base is a physical phenomena. And the seeing consciousness that we know, the knowing mind, that is the mental phenomena. And also the feeling. Sometimes we feel good, sometimes we feel not good, it's bad. So that feeling is also the mental phenomena. So these two things, the physical and mental phenomena happening at that time, at that time of seeing. So we have to note it as a whole thing. We don't need to separately see this is eye base, okay, this is visible form, okay, this is the knowing mind. Not like that. We take it as a whole. We note it as a whole thing, seeing, and we come to see any one of them. So that means there is mindfulness, there is concentration, and also because we come to know about the mental and physical phenomena, there is also the wisdom. And at that time, there is no chance for any hindrances. So that way we can prevent the hindrances from occurring. That way we can guard our eye door. And also, because we are just noting and observing that visible form, taking it just as an object, we are not thinking about that visible form. We are not analyzing about that visible form. What is that? Where it is from? What will happen to next? How is it? We are not thinking anything. It is just an object. It is just an object for us. So we should not think about that visible object that we just now see, just now saw. We should not think about. We just take it as an object and note it as soon as we see. During sitting meditation also, we close our eyes. We keep close our eyes. We are observing objects, but sometimes we still see something, some visible forms. But that seeing is not through this eye door, because our eyes are closed. The visible forms we are seeing when our eyes are closed is through the mind door. And that visible form is not occurring in that very moment. Yeah? When our eyes are open, we see the forms that is really in front of us, that is really occurring at that very present moment. But sometimes when our eyes are closed and still we see some sceneries, somebody, some persons, maybe our family members, our friends, we see. But that seeing is through the mind door. But in that case also, when we see those sceneries, those people, then we have to observe it as seeing. We should not follow that object without noting. We should not follow. Just, it is also an object, and as soon as it appears in our mind, then immediately we note it seeing. We should not think about that sceneries, that visible object, that vision. We should not think about that. So immediately we have to note it as seeing, and we will come to know what happened at that time, how we see the visible form at that time, whether it becomes more and more clearer, or whether it becomes blur, whether it disappeared. So we come to know that. Because we are able to note it immediately as seeing, that means there is effort, there is mindfulness, and there is concentration, also wisdom. And sometimes in the practice we hear sounds, different sounds we hear. We hear the sounds through ear. There is an ear base, ear door. And the sound is an object that strikes in the ear. And so the hearing consciousness occurs, the knowing mind, knowing that sound. So this sound and the knowing mind, they meet in the ear. Therefore, whatever sound we heard, we have to note it immediately, hearing. Not thinking about the sound. Where does this sound come from? Who is talking? What sound is that? How loud or how small? We should not think about that sound. As soon as we hear, we note it immediately. Sometimes we feel good, sometimes we feel bad, depending on the sound. But we keep on noting, hearing, continuously. So if we hear the sound that is occurring in that very moment, we hear through our ear base. Yeah? But sometimes in the mind also, sometimes we hear the sound. Somebody is talking with us. Actually, there is nobody talking with us, but we still feel that somebody talking with us, some sound. So in that case also, we have to note that sound as hearing. Sometimes we hear. There is no sound around us, but we still hear some sound in the ear. That maybe some sounds that we heard before, and we are hearing that again in our mind. And we are talking, we hear that talking sound in the mind, talking in the mind, and we hear that sound also. So if we hear that sound, we also have to note it, hearing immediately. Not thinking about the sound, what sound is that, who is talking with me, something like that. Don't think in that way. Just take it as an object and note it immediately. And sometimes we hear the sound from inside also. Sometimes from the belly, or sometimes from the other parts of the body, we really hear that sound. And that one also we have to note hearing. So if we are able to note any kinds of sound that we feel heard, then we have to note that immediately, hearing, so that we can see the nature of that hearing. Sometimes we come to know more about the sound, sometimes we come to know more about this ear base, and sometimes the hearing consciousness. At that moment, there is no hindrances. There is no hindrances. Instead of noting hearing immediately, if we are thinking about that sound, and sometimes the sound we feel not good, then anger may arise. The vyapada nivarana, the hindrance of ill will may arise, not satisfied with that sound. And it makes us angry. So if sometimes we hear the sound that we like, then we may be enjoying that sound. We are just listening that sound, not noting, just listening. Listening without noting means there is no mindfulness. Though we say, I know what I'm hearing, I know that sound, but we are listening, not noting, not observing. We have to be very careful. Sometimes we think that I know what sound I'm hearing, I know that. And we feel that, oh, my mindfulness is very good at that time because I hear the sound very clearly. But behind that, there are a lot of kilesas may occurring at that time. Because sometimes we feel it's good, sometimes we feel not good, sometimes we are analyzing about the sound, thinking about the sound. There is no mindfulness, though we feel, oh, I hear that sound very clearly. It could happen like that. Therefore, whenever we hear the sound, any kind of sound, we don't need to think about the sound. We don't need to differentiate the sound. We just take it as an object and immediately note it as hearing. And here again, in Satipatthana practice, we give priority to the internal objects. We give priority to the internal objects. Therefore, whenever we hear sounds from outside, if that sound does not overwhelm our noting, then sometimes we don't need to pay attention to the sound from outside. We try to keep our noting mind inside, observing the objects occurring inside. But sometimes the sound from outside is too loud. It is too loud, so we cannot focus the objects inside us. The objects inside us are somehow overwhelmed or covered by the sound from outside. at that time, we pay attention to that sound, noting hearing, hearing, hearing very carefully. Very carefully, we have to note hearing, hearing. Otherwise, our mind will be drifted away in that sound. So we have to be very careful when noting hearing, 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 the sound from outside. If the sound from outside is not very loud, sometimes we ignore that sound. Especially during walking meditation, sometimes it's difficult to keep our mind on the leg movements because there are lots of sounds around us, there are lots of visible objects around us, then our mind easily goes to those objects. So in walking meditation also, though there are lots of sound around us, we don't pay attention to those sounds. We just try to keep our mind in the legs, in the leg movements. Left, right, lifting, placing, lifting, moving, placing. We just try to keep our mind on those objects. If our mind goes to the sound, then immediately we bring that noting mind to the legs. So that way we can guard our ear door, the ear base. And when noting the sound, also we don't need to differentiate, this is ear base, this is sound, this is hearing consciousness. We don't need to do that. We just take it as a whole thing. And note it hearing, hearing. That way we can control our ear. So there will not be any chance for these hindrances to enter in our mind. And we will be able to develop the sustained mindfulness. And when we develop sustained mindfulness, automatically there will be a concentration. Actually, we don't need to do anything to develop concentration. If mindfulness is sustained, then concentration will automatically arise. It becomes stronger and stronger. And to have a sustained mindfulness, we need to apply ardent effort. So here again, the effort is very important, very essential. Initial launching effort. So that effort, the ardent effort, exerting all the time. We should exert that effort all the time. And also we have to focus the object. We have to focus the object or aim the object so that the noting mind and the object becomes face to face, very concurrent. By exerting effort, that effort push the noting mind towards the object, so the noting mind reaches the object. And these two mental powers, mental factors are very important in noting every arising objects. And in the nose base, nose door, the smell, good or bad smell, any kind of smell, it appears in the nose door. And so when it appears in the nose door, then there is a knowing consciousness. knowing that smell, knowing consciousness. So when we got some smell and our attention is there already, then we note it as smelling, smelling, smelling. As a whole thing. So that we come to know about the smell. We won't be enjoying the good smell and we won't be angry on the bad smell. But in the course of practice, this smelling, it hardly occurs. Mostly the seeing the visible forms and hearing the sounds, and also the touching the tangible objects. But smelling, not all the time, only sometimes we got some smell. And during eating time, there is a tongue base. And when we eat something, when we drink something, the taste of that food and drink, it appears in the tongue base, and we come to know about the taste. So when we are eating and we come to know about the taste, we are noting, tasting. But when we are chewing the food, we note it as chewing. And when we come to know the taste, we can note as knowing, or we can note as tasting. So when we are mindful in eating, in noting those tastes, then there will be no chance for, again, the hindrances, the defilements to occur, because we are very mindful. We will not be disappointed for the taste that we don't like, and we will not be attached to the taste that we like. There is no chance for raga, no chance for tanha, attachment, to occur, no chance for anger to occur, because we are very mindful when we are eating. So this type of the taste that appears in the tongue base, this type of object we will have only when we are having food. Other time, we will not have that type of object. But tangible objects, we may have that tangible objects most of the time, because the whole body, our whole body is a body base, is a body door, and many kinds of tangible objects appear in this body base. So this object is very wide, very wide. And we will continue this talk tomorrow. That's all for today.